What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of F1 Fantasy Pole Position. It is Monday, November 24th. My name is Ewan. On today's episode, I'm going to give you my team selection for the Qatar Grand Prix. Yesterday was one of the craziest days I can remember in F1 Fantasy. Going to get into that in a little bit, talk about the day that was the Las Vegas Grand Prix. But don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you are new around here. There's not a lot of you that will be new around here because yesterday we went over 4,000 subs, and that was the race to 4K. So now we've got the drive to 5. We're shooting for 5,000 subs. Probably not by the end of the season, but in 2026, that is going to be the goal. So thank you if you have subscribed to the channel this season. In previous seasons, we're going on to bigger and better things. And if you want to support me that little bit extra, don't forget that there are the YouTube memberships and the Patreon that you can sign up for. You get early access to videos like this, you get chitter chatter with me, and like first dibs on the 2026 prize league. So that's going to be super fun, but so much to get into today. So let's just get right into it. Starting off, we got to go back a little bit. So yesterday, watched the Grand Prix at 4:30 in the morning, went live for the race review at 7:30. At about 8:15 is when the news broke that McLaren were possibly getting disqualified. And it started off with Lando Norris, and that was kind of crazy. So at 8:30, I was like, I got to go get some breakfast. If they get summoned to the stewards, thinking that would be a quick process, I'll come back online. Not 5 minutes later, they get summoned to the stewards, and I'm like, okay, I got to get back online. I do the thumbnail, set up the live stream, go live. Another hour and 15 minutes passes, and it's still nothing. And it's 10 o'clock. I'm starting to get skeletal like on the stream. My stomach is growling. I'm pretty sure you guys could hear it on the microphone. So I got off, and then like an hour later, they finally disqualified it. So that took a while for the points to update and all that stuff. So I haven't actually had like a whole crystallized thought about the McLaren disqualification madness. But on the screen here, I highlighted some assets that were hurt or were helped by the disqualification. So Norris, Piastri, McLaren, obvious losers here. Norris was on 29 points. He finished on -10 with a change of 39 points in the negative. Piastri went from 20 to -14. McLaren 64 to -34. So huge loss for their managers. However, McLaren's in about 95% of the global top 500. And everyone I saw that scored over 300 points yesterday did not have McLaren. So great job by y'all if you took the risk to not go with McLaren at Vegas. Russell, Antonelli, Mercedes, and Red Bull all gained. Red Bull especially. This may have just been like a pit stop point thing, but they went from 67 points in the live scoring on F1 Fantasy right after the race to 89 points after the disqualification. So that was a huge gain for Red Bull. If you are one of their managers, let me know in the comments below. Clap, clap, clap all around for you guys because you absolutely crushed it, and you must have flown up the rankings. A little bit on my team, even though I did have McLaren in my squad, I also flew up about 1,000 spots. So now I'm inside the top 2K for the first time this season with the extra DRS chip in my back pocket and Abu Dhabi to go. So it's going to have to be a flyer of a chip if I'm going to crack the top 1K, but we are there. We are right there, and we can maybe do this goal that I set after the first race review on the Australian Grand Prix live stream, race review, whatever you want to call it. I was like, I'm going to go from 952,000 in the world, which is what I was, to the top 1K, and we're 991 places away from that goal. So I'm going to go for it. If I finish top 1K or top 5K, that's what it's going to be. I'm going to have to hold myself to this. I'm going to try and get that 1K goal. Let me know in the comments how you were affected by the McLaren DSQ Madness, though. And now we're actually going to get into the Qatar Grand Prix portion of this episode. Starting with a little bit of a track preview, Lusail International Circuit here. It kind of looks like an octopus to me, maybe more like Ditto from Pokemon. Maybe I've just aged myself there. 16 corners, 57 laps, 1 DRS zone. Over the last 3 seasons, which has actually only had the race twice, it's 5th for overtakes, but it's had 8 DNS because of the heat. 2024 podium was Verstappen, Leclerc, and Piastri. Lando Norris was well and truly in contention for this race and to win the whole thing, but he had a 10-second time penalty for failing to brake under yellow flags, which Max Verstappen somehow caught. It was like one of those, how did he do that? He was going like 200 miles an hour. I don't understand how he caught that Lando wasn't braking. But Should be an interesting race. It's a sprint race, so obviously an earlier deadline. So 2 p.m. UK time, 9 a.m. USA Eastern, which is actually probably in line with like most European lock lineup times, but it is going to be held later in the evening. But just don't get caught out by that. So we've got free practice 1 and sprint quali on Friday, and then we've got straight into the sprint on Saturday. So there's no extra practice sessions or anything like that. Going over to the Pirelli preview here in 2024, it was the C1, the C2, the C3. They're going to do the same again here, C1, C2, C3. However, there is a slight difference. Pirelli has mandated a 25 lap limit for every set of tire. This will force teams into at least a 2-stop race. So that is something we have to think about. They did this in 2023 when the race was held like a month or two earlier in the season. Like Logan Sargent had to retire because he was like throwing up all over himself. There were videos of the drivers really struggling to like get around the track. Oscar Piastri has come out and said like during that lap limit that they had, which was maybe a 20 lap limit at that time, he said it was like 57 laps of qualifying because they were just pushing. There was no tire management needed. So it's going to throw up some wrinkles in the system. It's generally a McLaren stronghold. However, in Brazil, I'm not sure how like on the radar this is, but in Brazil, after FP1 and the sprint qualifying, I believe, the FIA found out that teams had been using a weird like heated titanium block to like expand and then not like kind of get more off of the plank wear or the skid. And then they like banned that. They found out the teams were doing that and they banned that. And then the next race, McLaren gets popped for skid wear. So I don't know if that's just odd timing or just a coincidence, or if it is going to be a struggle for McLaren for the final 2 races of the season, but it is something we'll have to monitor. Maybe we'll get some more stuff out in the press this week, or I'll be listening to all the podcasts trying to figure out if McLaren is still like the number 1 constructor for this race. But for the Pirelli thing, 25 lap limit. So every team will be into a 2-stop. Going over to the weather forecast here. Friday, Saturday, going to be hot, but Sunday, a little bit cooler, 23 degrees Celsius, hazy, 0% chance of rain. We don't have to worry about rain here. If you have no negative, you might just want to play it for the heat and the adverse conditions. Maybe the rookies aren't up to par in like their physical fitness. Like it's the second to last race of the season. It's the longest season any of them have ever had in their professional racing careers. So maybe the heat could get to them. Maybe we could have some retirements, that kind of stuff. So if you got the no negative, I would probably play it here over Abu Dhabi. Going over to budget builders, I know we're not really concentrating on budget anymore with 2 races to go, but in the B tier bracket, there's 8 drivers that can score 10 points or less and have a max price rise. And that's really the main point I want to get across with budget builders is focus on points, because there are 8 guys that can get you max points for minimal points scored. So you should be fine there, whether it's Antonelli, who's going to be a great ad, Hadjar, Behrman, Sainz, Ocon, Gasly, Hulkenberg, Lawson. Those are the 8 drivers that can score 10 points or below and still go up a max price rise. So if you're worried about if that's like a thing that you flip the coin on to kind of figure out who you want to go with, you've got 8 options here. So there's really not a lot of budget concerns in F1 Fantasy this week. Antonelli is -24 for a good price rise, -9 for a price rise. That is the lowest. And then Lawson is the highest here, 2 points for a good price rise, 6 points for a great price rise. So not bad, not any bad options here. Ocon, Behrman still good for Haas as well. Hadjar, Sainz, Hulkenberg, kind of all over the spot. Hulkenberg as well, 0 and 5 points, but we will see how Sauber does around here. Yeah, we'll get there eventually. It's been a long day. Extra DRS boost options. So this will be the biggest chip that F1 Fantasy managers focus on this week. However, just to cover off other chips, Limitless, use it, autopilot, maybe just save it for a last race punt. No negative, you can use it. Wildcard, sure, go ahead. And final fix is situational, but I guess if anything pops up here, I would just go ahead and use it as well. If you've got 2 chips left, you got to use them each race, so just figure out an extra way to go about it. Extra DRS boost, though, is going to be the main topic of conversation when it comes to chip strategy this week. So on the screen here, if you're listening on the podcast side, highly suggest flipping over to the YouTube side, F1 Fantasy Pole Position, and looking at this graphic. So I've built 5 lineups here, and before you guys mention it, if you have a different variation of this, this is just kind of like a levels that I'm going with. So if you want Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, McLaren, and Ferrari in your squad, along with the 3 bottom of the barrel assets, which is Liam Lawson, Fernando Alonso, and Franco Colapinto. Those are the 3 cheapest drivers in the game. That's going to cost you 142.4 million. Over the last 5 races, they've averaged 179.2 points per race in that combo right there. And in F1 Fantasy Tools, the expected points is 222.5. For me, in the final column here, it's called My Moves, which means how many moves it would take me to get to this lineup. And because this is 142.4 million and I have 140.8 in budget, I cannot do this team. So if Ferrari looks okay, you never know. Crazier things have happened. McLaren got double DSQ'd yesterday on Sunday. So like you got to think about these things, I guess, with 2 races to go. Next line down here is McLaren, Lando, Verstappen, and Red Bull, $141.3 million in cost cap. Only 156.0 points per race, along with Lawson, Alonso, and Colapinto. 221.4 expected points, and I also cannot get there. Where it gets interesting for my own team is right here at 138.6 million. Lando, McLaren, Verstappen, and Mercedes. Points per race over the last 5, 179.6, which is the most among these 5 teams here. 233.1 expected points, and I could get there in 3 moves. In fact, I actually wouldn't need to go with Lawson, Alonso, and Colapinto. I could keep Sainz or just upgrade or Sainz or Gasly in that lineup, and I would be okay. So that would be my 3 moves. That'd be a variation on that. Next step down here is Lando, McLaren, George, and Red Bull, 135.1 million, 163.8 points per race, 201 expected points. I can get there in 3 moves. And then Lando, McLaren, Kimi, Mercedes, 126.3 million, 162 points per race over the last 5, but 195.3 expected points. And I can get there in 2 moves. So compare that to the George Russell lineup. That would save me a -10, right? So if I do the expected points, the Lando, McLaren, Verstappen, Mercedes route is actually 223 points for expected points, because I would need to take a -10 hit, which I'm perfectly fine with taking when it's like an extra DRS boost chip. I'm trying to set it up optimally. But the reason I have Lando and McLaren in all of these is because, well, one, I prepped it a couple of days ago before all that madness happened in Vegas, but I really think that a lot of us playing this chip are going to be going along the lines of McLaren and Lando. That just feels like a very safe, steady way to play the chip. The differential is already that you're playing a 3x boost on Lando Norris. That is already differential enough that you don't need to worry about that too much. Like, this is kind of what happens in FPL when you're playing your triple captain or whatever. People are like, oh, I should go differential with it. But it's like, the difference is that you already are tripling up on the score of Erling Haaland or Mohamed Salah or Bukayo Saka, like whatever you want. So you don't have to overthink it too much. But I want to focus on this extra DRS boost options because it's going to be very, very important this week for some of us who are trying to crack that top 1K to kind of like hit this out of the ballpark and like really score a bunch of points in F1 Fantasy if we want to do it. So it's going to be very interesting. These are the 5 lineups I've got. They're kind of like the levels. So like wherever your budget is, you can afford that, but you could move up or down and kind of adjust it as needed. So let me know if you have any variations on these lineups in the comments below, and we can get into it in the comments, or you can hit me up on X at F1 Fantasy Ewan or TikTok at F1 Fantasy Ewan as well. But let's get into my team selection. So here's the T1 squad, the squad that is now top 2K in the world, looking to crack that top 1K. Verstappen, Russell, Behrman, Sainz, Gasly, McLaren, and Mercedes. So let's check it out here. I'm going to play that extra DRS boost chip this week. And the one option I could afford, or the best option I could afford, was getting in Lando and getting rid of Russell, pairing him with Verstappen. So let's show it all here. So I can get rid of, I believe I can keep Sainz, but let's just double check here because it's some loosey-goosey math as per usual here on F1 Fantasy Pole Position. Like I said, you can like the video, subscribe to the channel, and you can join Patreon or the YouTube membership if you really enjoy the loosey-goosey maths. Verstappen, Norris, and then I'd have to go down here to 9.4 million and bring in Fernando Alonso, and Franco Colapinto. That would be as low as I can go with Carlos Sainz. So don't mind it at all. Carlos Sainz in a good bit of form himself, 6, 15, 16 over the last 3 races. So not too shabby. However, if I could also keep Pierre Gasly, which is not the worst thing in the world. And then that leaves me a little bit of room to maybe bring in not Fernando Alonso or what do you call it? Franco Colapinto. So I could avoid that if I go with with Gasly instead of Sainz. I could go with Hulkenberg, Bortoleto, Lawson instead, and kind of beef up my B tier assets a little bit. Lawson is maybe the most interesting. He was just like unfortunately tagged in that turn 1 at the beginning. So was Gasly, to be honest. And with budget not as big of a deal, like running these big 4 units for the final 2 races of the season is not a big problem for me. Verstappen, Norris, McLaren, Mercedes feels quite good about that. However, if I wanted to go down a different route, like say McLaren does look way off it, there are routes where I can get to like a Ferrari now. I could get rid of Ollie Behrman, bring in Ferrari with 6.5 million left in the bank. This would only be 2 moves, which is not the worst thing in the world. I could bring in Hadjar, which I kind of like as well. And then I could do the extra DRS boost on Verstappen and Russell. I could bring in Red Bull, obviously. There's a world where like Kimi Antonelli is just the one shining moment, like rookie coming through out of nowhere to end the season. I guess not out of nowhere. That's a little unfair to him. But then I can upgrade. Like I could go Behrman all the way to Albon, who loves to shout at his race engineer for some reason now, but I probably wouldn't do that. But Mercedes all the way up to Ferrari would be an option as well. Like something like that. This is kind of covering off all 4 teams. So it's probably not optimizing the chip all that much. But if you're not on the extra DRS boost chip, maybe there's a way. Personally, if I'm not on the extra DRS boost chip, I'm trying to still get to a Verstappen and Lando lineup because I'm still covering it off. I'm only losing like 1 times on Verstappen, 1 times on Norris. So it can mitigate the damage a little bit in F1 Fantasy. So it is Monday, November 24th. There's 5 days until race lock. I've got a Q&A stream, final thoughts, deadline, race review, all that stuff coming up this week for the Qatar Grand Prix. But if I had to lock in, I always love doing this. If I had to lock in, I would probably do Lando Norris with Fernando Alonso and Fernando Alonso and Franco Colapinto. Don't love it with Colapinto, but these guys can't hurt me in budget. These guys should rise. I don't know why that still matters, but it still matters a little bit in my brain. I can't imagine. I guess the one other thing is that if Piastri comes out of nowhere and it's like, okay, it's time to rock and roll. Like I'm pretty sure I can go Sainz all the way down there and bring in Liam Lawson. And that is also a -10 and go triple McLaren. This is maybe a way where I go all in and it's like do or die, like gotta go it all for McLaren. But Piastri is just driving so poorly right now in F1 Fantasy. Like negative points in 4 of the last 6 races is not going to get it done for anyone. So I really can't see me going down this route of triple McLaren, which is where I was hoping to go as recently as like 2 or 3 races ago. But like I said, Verstappen, Norris with Gasly or Sainz, kind of going to depend on that. Like Williams could be okay in Qatar. I'm not entirely sure how their car will suit it, but maybe upgrading, maybe keeping Gasly only being exposed to 1 bottom of the barrel asset, and then having Lando and like kind of my pick of the 6.1 and below, which would probably be coming down to Hulkenberg or Lawson, to be honest. But that's for a -10, so I don't love that either. But the 4 main guys would be Verstappen, Norris, McLaren, and Mercedes for me right now. If Ferrari shows something, then I have to make a sacrifice with Verstappen and Norris, which is not that fun. If Red Bull shows something, then things could get a little bit easier, but I think I would still have to sacrifice probably a Verstappen or a Norris down to a Russell kind of thing. But there's still plenty of time to go in F1 Fantasy before we have to make these tough decisions. We're going to have Friday where we get FP1 and the sprint quali, and that will certainly help our decision making process. But let me know what your lineup thoughts are in the comments below. And like I said, hit me up on X at F1 Fantasy Ewan. But that'll do it for today's episode. There's so much content right now. We're in the second race of a triple header, so I want to try and keep these as short and sweet as possible. And I think I failed once again because, like I said, there's so much to talk about in F1 Fantasy that I can't stop talking about it. So as you can see, if you follow me on X or TikTok at F1 Fantasy Ewan. But don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. I really appreciate it. The drive for 5 is well and truly on, so we're going to start doing that now that we're past 4,000 subs. Hopefully everyone has survived. Las Vegas has recovered in this short 24 hours since that all went down, because we got to turn it around quickly and get to Qatar. So once again, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you next time.